hardly 8% emission reduction has taken place. 92% is still business as usual. And also the BBC report is saying, considering the two observatory, Hawaii and Tasmania, the carbon dioxide level has actually gone up from around 410.11 to 414.15. And if you consider the month of July to month of June, the month of July, the emission was 17% down, but June is around hardly 5%, and they expect when the year will end, it will be around 4%. So nothing very significant. What's your take on that?
No, absolutely. You know, at the face of it, Jayanta, as you said, we have seen clear skies. We have seen very calm days. We have seen much cleaner rivers and oceans. Because many of the activities that were happening in full swing and the way we were polluting the environment directly, that definitely stalled for several weeks. And that did have an impact. But the reality isn't exactly the way you quote the data. In fact, politicians are now using this as an opportunity to relax environmental norms and destroy environment much faster, and in some cases in a much more structural manner. You know, by relaxing these norms, like the debate that we have been having in this country on environmental impact assessments, and on how the so-called desperate measures are going to give much more space to industry to continue polluting in the name of generating jobs and keeping people employed. I think so. That's another reason why the gains that we did make in the initial phase, we are going to lose everything, not only in the next few months, but in a much longer manner, because some of the structural changes that are being done into the environmental policies are going to be very, very significant. And many politicians around the world and in our region are using it as an opportunity, because we are stuck in our homes. We cannot protest. Civil society space has shrunk. So I think it's a very difficult moment where we cannot really challenge those acts in the manner we could before COVID.
I think very, very important point. I'll come to Sanjay for that, but before Sanjay can actually come on how the civil society can take on this challenge what Ajit mentioned. But Gulab Saab, in Bangladesh is one of the country where the climate change impacts are so visible and on your face. We also, in this part of the India, in West Bengal, we also have in our Sundarbans, we have seen the storm like Ampan, the Bulbul, all being affected. Now Goti is kind of starting to maneuver. Now, what is the kind of mindset of Bangladeshi politicians? Very interesting to know, because Bangladesh is much more head-on impacted by climate change. And COVID also shows that what can climate change do. I was mentioning about this Bill Gates notes. Bill Gates is saying that climate change actually, this COVID is showing what climate change can do maybe some decades after, how impactful it is. So what is the politicians doing or saying about this COVID and climate change action in Bangladesh?
Thank you so much, Jantada. I think let me just make my personal opinions on these issues. I used to call this 4 P's have changed because of COVID-19, and these P's are the first P is priority. So priority has been changed in all stakeholders in Bangladesh. Government organization, NGOs, and civil society, and other private sectors as well. The second P is the all policy focus. So what we see now, just 6-7 months before, we have seen the Ministry of Environment, Forest, Climate Change, and Department of Environment have led 2 major strategic documents, which is National Adaptation Plan, and the second one is the NDC review. These 2 documents have been stuck, in last 4 or 5 months just because of COVID-19. So the government did not, could not, or I can make a straight opinion that they failed to focus this policy issue. And the political commitment has also changed at the national level and also at the global level. As you can see, that the investment has gone on the COVID-19 in many cases. And the last, 4th P is, the new poor. Poverty has really increased. Let me just give you a simple statistic. In a recent study of Bangladesh Institute of Development Studies, it says that poverty increased by 27% in the urban areas and 24% in the rural areas, which is really alarming because this was just opposite, just before 7 months. So these changes are we see in Bangladesh in different perspectives in relation to COVID-19 and climate change. Yeah.
Not very hopeful words, because Bangladesh, you feel that they need to go soft on climate change action because of COVID. That is something which I think is not very, very hopeful. But Amar, what is about the Pakistan? Pakistan has a lot of climatic impacts in the recent time. And what do you feel about the Pakistani priorities? There are various issues, but what the Pakistani politicians are thinking in that line?
Pakistan is always going through the political turmoils, and there are always the political crises in this country. But on the same side, at that time when we were going through the COVID, there were the locust attack in different parts of Pakistan. And then recently it was not reported I am surprised that why it was not reported. The monsoon rains has brought in southern part of the Pakistan a massive flooding. So already, Karachi is going through the heat waves. But despite all these manifestations of climate change, the politicians are not talking about the climate action. That is very surprising because of the political crisis all the time in this country. We don't see any actions, anything on the climate action. We have like the billion tree tsunami by the Prime Minister Imran Khan, but that is much to the mitigation, but there is no adaptation or other things that we don't see on the horizon of this country.
Okay. Sanjay, I think you and Harjeet, both Harjeet internationally and you South Asia-wise, been trying to link all this civil society movements and all. But what we are hearing from both Ghulam Saab and Amar is that actually COVID had diluted the government action. If I'm not, that's the point being made by both of them. So Sanjay, how you, as a civil society front, what you think and what's you plan to go about it?
Well, I think first of all, I would also, like to say that Amar, if locusts has not been reported in Pakistan, they were reported in India this time. I mean, first time, I think after such a long time, locusts entered India. So, and that is also being attributed to the fact that there were less pesticide spray because of lockdown in Pakistan and Iran. That's why they could come to India. That is one linkage they're showing. So we saw locust attack a big way. In terms of civil society, shrinking space on civil society, government's message is very clear. And the message is economy needs to be revived at any cost. Even if that cost is at the cost of future generation, they don't care. Economy need to be revised. And that would mean giving a free run to the corporates. Do whatever you want to do, no democratic processes in place, no voice of poor, because corporates are doing a big favor on poor people by reviving the economy. I think this is the message. Unfortunately, I have to put it in a bit harsh manner. And same is the case.
The Chinese approach.
And maybe you can also term it as Chinese approach. You're talking about South Asia, but yes, Amar, you're right. We can term it as Chinese approach. In India, there are two very clear recent, legislations that indicates that how civil society do not have any say, and their role is totally limited to service delivery. One is, of course, environment impact assessment amendment. We already had one dialogue on that long back with you, Ajanta. How it has been diluted. So there is no corporate accountability now. It has been diluted to the minimum level possible. And then second is the Foreign Currency Regulatory Act, which has been amended recently, where so basically the way the money can be utilized now, or foreign funds can be used, they are very limited. They are limited to the extent that the policy advocacy and campaign work cannot be funded. If it is only ground implementation, fine. If it is advocacy where you need more, more resource persons time or honorarium for experts, that is not permitted. So these are two indications that you cannot do anything on that. In terms of what civil society, and let me also quote what Ghulam said, and I just want to add, and there is one more observation from my end, Ghulam. This is in Bangladesh also. On one side, if civil society is very vocal about adaptation and vulnerability, and they see government and civil society position together, they both are on the same page on that. On the mitigation front, they are totally opposite, and civil society has a very limited space to say. For example, Rampal coal power plant is one example in Sundarbans, Jayanta and Ghulam, where civil society didn't say anything because providing energy security through coal is seen as a national security issue. And then nobody can say anything about it because that would be considered as treason. In terms of civil society, as cancer, we have already started talking about coal phase out, at least start phasing out any future investment in the coal sector. If not coal phase out by tomorrow, but at least start phasing out the future investment.
Okay.
We are already making those points, and yeah, I think I'll stop it.
In fact, I think Greenpeace has just come up with a report which is saying that India has reduced its sulfur dioxide emission by 6% over the from 2018 in 2019 compared to 2018, but it's still being about 1/5 of global sulfur dioxide emission, mainly due to around 10 coal-based thermal power plants across the country. So that clearly shows and underlines the impact of coal on the climate change, on the environment. I think not only in India, also in Russia, China, and elsewhere as well. Yes,
I'll add one thing here. India is harping on one achievement, and recently, Joint Secretary from Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change has said that our emission reduction due to lockdown will be around 8% in 2020. So we don't, I mean, in a way, that's good. But then they are not talking about the overshoot. It's going to happen from last quarter of 2020 and 2021, when the economy engine will start working and more.
What will happen then? What will happen then?
Fossil fuel-based energy will be used.
Can I come back, John, to that?
Let me just quickly go to Harjeet. Let's try to link the global scenario, because South Asia is not isolated from the global trend. So what is happening in South Asia is definitely linked to global trend. Then I'll come to Bangladesh and Pakistan again. Harjeet, in USA, the US presidential election is almost on verge. And before the election, the US environmental legislation and the people who run it very clearly said that the industry need not to be concerned about the regulation per se. It means that for COVID, you are, as Sanjay was putting up, that is all free. So what do you feel? It's a global trend. It's not only a South Asian trend, but it's a global trend to dilute the environmental and climatic regulation to accommodate quote unquote economic regain.
It indeed is a global trend, and there are a number of examples. Let me first start with Kenya, for instance. Our colleagues from ActionAid Kenya are telling us that how coal-fired power plant is going in full swing, even when it is affecting communities. While we know the big fight that we are having against, setting up new coal-fired power plants. The COVID money is not going to people who are affected, but the florist industry. We know that there's a big industry in Kenya. Money is going there. And we are hearing such things. Brazil is a case in point, that denies climate change. US, while you are right, they're not doing as much, but this time let's also give credit to the general public in the US. The presidential debate that's happening right now has a lot more climate on the table than it has previously been in the last few decades. That's a good news. Similarly, in Europe, I would say we have still seen progress. Of course, their targets are not as good as they are supposed to, but at least Europe is talking about climate. Even in the summit that they had with China, climate was very much on the agenda. In fact, that pushed China to come up with this target. So I would not say that the trend is all over, where some countries are using it to their advantage to dilute environmental norms, but there are some countries and regions who are still holding the fort because they know that if they don't fix climate, it's going to affect their economies in the longer term. And some would like to take advantage of the new green economy that is emerging. but that doesn't leave us with a very hunky-dory situation when many major economies relying on fossil fuels and are relaxing environmental norms. I think that's where we really need to worry. And one more thing, if I want to bring in something that has been very exciting over the last 2 years, has been the young people's movement, right at the forefront on challenging politicians. Now with them, they being confined to their homes, and so the whole pressure that should have come by now, as we know this year, countries are supposed to revise their climate action plan by end of the year, and that pressure would have worked immensely. That pressure is no more. You can't compare online protests with the real ones on the ground, where you see hundreds and thousands of people testing and getting that attention.
But I would like to congratulate you here for making this movement, which is a good move to our university. So there's a hope.
There's a hope. No, hope has to be there. Without hope, we will not survive. But what Ajit just pointed out, in Madrid, perhaps all of us were there, we all saw that momentous and I think the historic movement of the young. You said Ajit, young led it, but I think people of all ages and everybody. I find kind of French people, Spanish, the German, and who was not there. That thousands and thousands of people, they just walk. Unbelievable scenario of that evening, and that really showed the people concerned about climate change. Now, taking cue from what Ajit has said, my question to both
we're in British Columbia. Our 11th stop on our 150
are now
road
having
trip across Canada. Come to High
whatever you call it. Now, do you feel that this 2020, we were discussing it within a part of the program, this year when Paris Agreement was supposed to be on the ground. Unfortunately, 2020 is, as of now, it's just been paused. But what do you feel? 2021, Glasgow, COP26, hopefully will be held at one time. Countries, Bangladesh, whatever the Bangladesh committed and whatever the Pakistan committed, are they going to stick to that commitment?
Flying a drone has changed the way that I see the world.
Yeah, thank you, Jankuda. I think we just had a meeting on NDC review yesterday, among the different stakeholders, and the climate vulnerable countries, they are expecting to submit this review version of the NDC, by 30th of December this year. So that's one thing. But let me just share at least 2-3 good things that happened in Bangladesh during these last 6-7 months related to climate change. The first thing is, you are quite aware that Bangladesh, about the Bangladesh Climate Change Trust Fund, since 2010, and then the government has allocated 50 crore GDP to 100 crore GDP. So our expectation was like this might be decreased this year, but this didn't increase. So they allocated again 100 crore GDP, which is about 12 to 13 billion US dollars. And the second good thing has happened. Recently the Prime Minister just inaugurated the regional office for Global Commission on Adaptation, which is a good thing that we built in Bangladesh. And the third thing that has happened, Prime Minister, recently on 25th September, in the 75th event in Assembly, she proposed, several good points. And one of the major good points is, there were 5 proposals.
also
the miracles where you would least expect them.
renewable energy generation installed in NDC. They have not yet put it. India has a 2023 target of 100
The two
gigawatts by
cities reach around the desert peninsula of Arabia
175.
like two
It is expected to increase from 2022 to 2030 by another 270 gigawatts of
millions
renewable.
of years ago.
But they are not
This
making any
was unheard of.
contribution. They are not giving because they don't want to bring it to the issue of
Instead,
international
hidden under the sand,
and now COVID has an impact because not availability of solar panels and all that. Renewable energy expansion
now
for
fuels
example,
our
almost
world.
3 gigawatts of solar
Natural riches
are
of the past,
old because they have missed the deadline
part of
because
the story.
80% solar panels.
Oh,
10,000 years
then again,
ago,
it's a
the
tricky
Gulf
affair.
was a
80%
swampy
coming from China,
floodplain.
and you can turn around and say, no, we are not going to take anything from China,
It
and so
disappeared
where the
underwater.
this will come.
And knowing the sentiments between India and
Red
China
Sea
nowadays,
was
That
formed much
sentiment is
earlier
running
as
very strong
Africa
right
and
now.
Arabia's
But
tectonic plates
the
pulled
point
apart,
is that
leaving a chasm
on
a
one side,
mile
when
deep,
we are achieving
now
this
filled
kind
with
of
seawater.
goals of solar and other
The edges,
energy
fringed
of
with coral,
non-fossil fuel energy, so
disappear
to say.
into the depths.
At the same time, we are opening up our coal fields for digging out. So now the coal blocks are being given out to various companies
The
for
reef
digging out. So
is
that's not
a
a
jeweled
good domain
city
for India,
perched
that they are
on the
now
cliff
opening
top.
up the coal blocks. That is not a good domain, isn't it?
indeed, I mean, I think because of COVID, we are again climbing the same dirty tree, which we all decided that we'll get down and
Yes.
we will plant a new tree to climb up. So I think, coal expansion has happened, privatization
It's
of
a community
coal mine
with
is
amazing
on start,
relationships between
and in
animals.
fact, there is a world's second largest coal mine.
5-centimeter wrasse
coal reserves
grew
has been
sweet
found in
lips,
Birbhum,
even
West Bengal,
combing the tender
Janta,
gills.
which India,
I know.
both
They
state
eat
and
any
central government wants
parasites
to,
and dead
start
skin,
digging, which will be
a reward
bad
for their
news,
trouble.
and we certainly need some kind of global
A
response.
moray
from India
eel,
at this point
the
of time.
2.5-meter dragon of the
Ajit,
reef, is attended
it's
by
really
shrimps.
amazing because just now Sanjay mentioned about Birbhum coal block. It's a huge coal block, so to say, that's been claimed at least. Now,
They
that's a
enter the
catch-22
jaws of
scenario.
death to keep razor-sharp teeth
central
clean
government, the
in
state government,
exchange
they are
for any
claiming
morsels
once
they
this
find.
coal block is open,
No
thousands
opportunity
and
is
thousands will
wasted,
get
however
jobs,
desperate it may seem.
their socio-economic improvement will be there. That's one part of it. And other side, it is going to impact huge on the local environment and also on the global environment. And I know
Damselfish
people in
hide
that
in
area
anemone,
who are actually trying to
protected by
counter it.
tentacles
But
that would
again, the people
paralyze
who are
other
supporting
fish.
it, they are also a huge group. So this is a very tricky situation for
An
the
anemone
environmentalists
can
and the climate
close, and the
kind
local
of
clownfish is
experts,
finding his home a tight
how to
squeeze.
marry this requirement, the socio-economic
Every relationship
requirement,
can
and
have
also the
difficult
environment
moments.
requirement. But before I come and conclude with the Paris thing again, my small question, very quick response to all of you.
This underwater community lies along
Increasingly,
the
the
shores
world is
of
seeing the
ancient human
impact of climate
settlements.
change. As we mentioned, all of us,
The Middle East is the birthplace
storms
of our
like
civilization.
Amphan, storm like Bulbul,
Over
the
4,000 years
the
ago,
floods
the first
across South
city
Asia,
rose here,
Bangladesh is
the
having
cradle
flood,
of
India is having
mathematics,
flood,
astronomy,
Pakistan
and
is also
medicine.
having flood. So we are having floods everywhere. So
If the Garden of Eden's rivers flowed anywhere,
expanded
it was
the
into
USA,
the
we have
Gulf.
seen so many climate
Ancient
emergencies.
Mesopotamia was on the
Not
northern shoreline
are not the politicians
with
the
Persia to
obvious
the east.
linkage between this and that, or they are naive enough to just
dust of
concentrate on
history
the
has settled
smaller,
in the
narrow
Gulf
time zone.
as
To
sand
just think of
and
their
mud.
boats and everything. Very quick take from all. Then Harjit started, then I'll
The
go
sea
around.
is like
Harjit?
a hot tub.
No, it is
It
indeed
gets
very
hotter and
painful, and it's a
saltier
paradox
than
that
any
we are living
other
with.
open
But
sea in the
if
world.
policymakers are aware, it is something that we can go very well beyond. Let me quote what International
It's surprising
Trade
that
Confederation
corals
puts
can
it when
survive.
they speak to the workers.
They have
Even on
miraculously
these kind
found
of
ways to
issues,
cope,
the
much to the
slogan that they have
excitement of
is,
scientists.
there are no jobs on a dead planet.
There are other clues to hidden
How
riches.
we need to connect.
A turtle on its
With
way to find
workers saying
food.
we are not creating jobs for you in a manner that we will see our planet dying.
It's
And
different from the
that
Red Sea
reality
reef.
we are already facing
This
is that
is more like
the
a bombed
kind of
city.
impacts that we have been seeing.
Devastated
And a
by
concept
heat
that has
and
become very
salt.
popular over the last few years, but still remains in the international circle and and not many countries have started talking about it, is called just transition.
Small
We
squid
need
begin a
transition to greener
quoting
economy,
in a
but we need to
psychedelic
do it in a
language of
manner which is
hues and
just,
colours.
which is fair, and particularly which puts social justice at the heart of it. Now, India,
Life
being
in all
a
its
large
wonderful
economy,
forms
and
will
we still
emerge
have
in the
poor
Gulf,
people who need to be
though
taken
it's
out of
never
poverty, and
obvious.
COVID has made things much more difficult. But that does not mean, as Sanjay was saying,
Reefs
to
here
go
are
backwards
small
and
and
start digging
isolated.
coal again. The world has moved on. We have seen
Submerged
how
sandy
even the
plains
coal-fired
are
power
an
plants are
extension
going
of
to
the
be
Arabian
nothing but
desert.
stranded
But
assets.
here, underwater,
So we really
rocks
need
turn into
our
cuttlefish
policymakers
on
to
closer
wake up,
inspection.
to also look at economics and to speak to the workers. And let's not play
Fan worms
vote
cast
bank
their
politics
nets.
all the time. This is what we have to educate
And
workers,
unseen
educate
animals
investors,
clean out their
industrialists,
burrows,
that we have to adopt
making
greener
miniature
pathways.
volcanoes.
And the world has moved on, and the economics is now with us on renewable energy and the new economies that we are
To
talking about, which are much cleaner and
Amar,
cleaner.
Amar, what's your take on this? That the politicians are so good, they are
Thousands
kind
of square
they
kilometers
just
of
can't see
sand
the
have
obvious
been
linkage.
colonized by seagulls.
In your country, what do you feel? They're
The
so
underwater
being
meadows may
paranoid
not
about
look
the
like
politics
much,
and
but
vote
this
banks
is
so
one
that
of the most
they can't
productive
look beyond.
habitats on
The same
Earth.
in your country, in my country, in every country, I think, across. Why the politicians are a
Its
different,
riches
are the different
are hard
species?
to see.
They're not Homo sapiens sapiens, they're different
Shrimpfish
species.
mimic
Amar?
seagrass.
Yeah, but I think that in
Blennies
other
hide
parts of
in
the world,
holes.
South Asia has kind of
A 2-meter annulated
covered
sea
all these
snake
issues.
is one of the
Look,
most
we
venomous
all are
creatures in the
the
world,
victim of climate
with
change.
several times
The
a
climate
rattler's
change
killing
makes
power. He
it
hunts
along.
fish like little
But
blennies.
surprisingly, politicians are not looking as the
Got one.
environment.
Sanjay has something to say.
Sanjay?
No, I agree. I think the
Most
fact
of
that
us
this
would
is the
have
time when we more
rather money than tangible wealth,
where we are
and a
protecting
great
ourselves,
occasion is
not
somehow
only in
spoiled
South
for
Asia,
us unless
but then
photographed.
we are willing to pollute South Asia for
And
economic gain.
to read
I also
about it
want
the
to,
next day in the
add one more
newspaper
bit, I think, which
is
is
oddly
important. It has been proven
more
Unlike the
fun
muddy
for
Gulf,
us than the
or for
original.
reef
any
very
I'm not trying to put you
wind
down.
up with Rajiv,
The
is that
edge falls away.
what is in
It's an
store?
expression in you as
Glasgow
well.
From the
is
reef
about
fall away too.
a year from
Like
One
fruit
must
tumbling
live.
off the edge of a
if
table.
everything goes right, hopefully.
We need to
Tiny
It's
survive.
another
boughs try
12,
and
13
grab
months.
me
Go on.
What
as
do we
it
expect
sinks
from
into the
Glasgow?
dark,
Do you
unexplored
feel,
We must
depths,
go on.
a mile below.
globally, generally, but more specifically for your country, that Glasgow will be kind of a
Along
a
these
ray of
city
hope,
limits,
or it will be a business as
gangsters
usual, like
prowl.
Copenhagen and all that unfolded? What you feel?
Blue-finned
Gulab sir.
trevally are predatory hunters cruising the
You're
hood.
asking me
Very quick,
or,
very quickly, very quickly.
Okay. I think I would be optimistic because you know I'm
Okay, you'll be
hoping that
optimistic.
I'm hoping that there will be something happening on the ambitious target. So this is 2020. So we agreed that after 5 years, before 5 years we decided on this. So there must
A
be
revision.
some ambitious target. Yeah.
So ambitious target, but at the same time, ground level implementation of the previous target needs to
I would be
start.
optimistic
So that is
too.
something more important
I
to
would
this
be optimistic
post-COVID
on
scenario.
this issue too.
You're optimistic on both counts. Amar, very quickly, what about the previous target on ground implementation, and what about the new target? Quickly, what's your take, Amar? Amar, we can't hear you. Can you hear me? Well, you fix it up. I can hear you, Sanjay. Amar, go ahead. I asked, Amar, can you hear me?
Okay.
Am I audible, Amar?
I think there's a lag.
I mean, there's some network issues. Sanjay, what you very quickly your take?
I'll tell you very quickly. Let's be optimistic for Glasgow because of the positive development in EU and China. They have set the ball rolling in the right direction. We do hope they'll be able to drag laggard countries along with them.
But one day we have to discuss.
Not keeping any
But
hope
one day we have to discuss, Sanjay, post-COVID and post-India-China, what will happen to the blessing and everything. That's I think
Exactly.
another fascinating.
That's
Ajit, final take yours. What do you feel is going to probably happen in Glasgow? Are we going to be really more action-oriented Glasgow, or will be business as usual, more promises, as we saw in Madrid also, that issues being dug up and then taking a lot of time and then finally nothing happening? What's it mean in Glasgow? Will COVID push the politician or will COVID drag the politician? What will it mean?
Well, I share the optimism that Ghulam and Sanjay had, but I'll put up my own rider. I'm cautiously optimistic. There are some good signs from EU and China, as Sanjay also said. I am also keeping a keen eye on what happens in the US, even if Joe Biden and it's pretty likely at this juncture. But his thought is also not that ambitious. I think we need a lot more stronger civil society movement and citizen movement in the US to push US in its own ambition, but also meet its global responsibility of providing finance. And this is where I feel that COVID has made things very difficult, particularly on climate finance. While as we all are developing countries, we are talking about ASEAN, but let's not forget, on one hand, we need to put pressure on our own countries, but we also need international finance to help our governments who still have a lot of poor people to take taken out of poverty. They need international support. So I think both the things are important. We putting pressure on our politicians, but also making sure that the global system is working to help developing countries and adopt that greener pathway and also tackle.
Thank you. I think it's a fascinating discussion for us 40 minutes or so. But what all of them shared kind of optimism, as Harjit kind of qualified it, would say that kind of a cautious optimism. I think we are all optimists because the world has to survive. As of now, we don't have any planet B to go lock, stock and barrel and survive. We have to live on this in this world, and I don't see that running away is the option. A migration from a small area can be an option, but it can't be an option for the globe. The globe cannot run away. So Glasgow is coming 13 months down the line, but South Asia being one of the most vulnerable climate action. And as you said, the COVID has complicated things. Definitely COVID has complicated things. But Harjeet and Sanjay and Ghulam, I think it's a challenge also on the experts like you, or the civil society activists, the experts, also I think the media as well, to find the way out. To find the way out. We need to find a way out because the world has to survive. And if the world has to survive, the climate change has to be taken head on. The climate action has to be implemented. So with these words, and this is the first episode, we definitely will keep on discussing in the future episodes as well. With all this, we conclude here. Thank you everybody from the Climate Channel, from the Plural, who are hosting this program. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great to connect again.
Here, every home is a school of celebration.